Today, the latest credit aggregates. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news, which includes Australia, but of course other areas too. Now I'm based in the UK. But today I just wanted to cover off the latest relating to the credit aggregates that came from the RBA at the end of last month, and also the APRA data that talks about where lending is, because it's slowing down. And I think the rate of growth is easing back, which may well suggest to me that interest rate rises may be lower than some are expecting ahead. Anyway, today let's look at the data. So we'll look first at the RBA Financial aggregates, which showed that to February 2023, the annualised growth for credit was 7.6% compared with 8% previously. And over the last year, 5.8% compared with 7.8% for housing, 0.3% compared with a drop of 3% in February 2022 for personal credit, and business credit was higher at 11.9% compared to 9.9% February 2022. On a monthly basis, total credit grew 0.3% compared with 0.4% in January. Housing grew at 0.3%, the same as last month. Personal credit was flat compared with a growth of 0.1% last month. And business credit at 0.4% was slightly lower than the 0.5% in January. Broad money, 0.1% compared with 0.8%. I think that's an indication of the tightening in the economy. Now, if we look at the monthly RBA credit aggregates, housing was 0.34% higher, continued to ease back. Owner occupation was 0.41%. whilst investment was 0.23%. You can see that personal credit has been a little stronger, but easing a little. One of the things there, of course, is that more people are now turning to credit to try and help them through the current financial pressures that they have. And business lending is down 0.41% compared with where it was previously. Now, I think it's worth saying that these monthly numbers are pretty wobbly and rubbery, so don't get too worried about them, but nevertheless it does show a general easing back in my view. If we then look at the total aggregate growth, 0.35% credit in the month continues to ease down, and broad money is down to 0.12%. Again, it's an example underscoring how the tightening in the economy continues to run. If we then look at the annualised rates, housing was down to 5.82% growth, still growing, but not as much as previously. Owner occupation growth was at 6.33%, still easing, but stronger than investment, which was 4.81%. But all three is trending down. Personal credit is trending up, 0.32%, again, because more people are reaching for credit to try and help alleviate some of the financial pressures they're under. And business credit is easing down to 11.87%. If we look then at the annualised growth, we can see that all credits at 7.59%, so that's lower than it's been for quite some time. Another example of tightening, I think, in the economy. And the broad money was also at 7.01%, is down a little. Those signals indicate further tightening ahead, I think, in terms of economic activity. If we then look at the 3-month credit aggregate data, housing at 1.01%, owner occupation at 1.22% was stronger than investment at 0.65%, and all three are trending down. It's also worth noting that personal credit was down a little this month. That's, of course, following the Christmas splurge. But business was also down to 1.23%. And 3-month aggregate was 1.05%, and broad money was down to 1.63%. So again, I think indications of more tightening ahead. Looking at the APRA data, which of course relates to all the banks, we can see that the total amount outstanding for mortgage lending, that's both investment and occupying, was more than 2 trillion and 74 billion. That's another record. And looking at the breakdown there, both owner-occupied lending and investment lending grew, but the mix continues to ease against investment lending at 32.72%. Looking at the ADI changes over the month, Owner occupation was 0.43%, investment lending was 0.2%, and the aggregate of the two, 0.35%. So owner occupation still stronger, but all three are trending down. And looking at the selected portfolio movements, you can see there that the Commonwealth, ANZ and Westpac and Macquarie lead the pack. National Australia Bank and HSBC follow. And over on the other side of the equation, Suncorp and Bendigo are both losing share, whilst AMP is straddling with investment lending down a little, but owner occupation rising a little. So the question then, to summarise, is what's going on? Well, we can see here, I think, that overall credit activity is continuing to ease back. No surprise, of course, because momentum is driven fundamentally by property transactions, and whilst there are some property transactions out there, the total volume and even total refinancing looks to me to be coming off a little, although I do expect the APRA data to be reinforced by the ABS data that will come out showing new lending in a few days, and I'll cover that in a separate post. So from a credit perspective, it seems to me that the RBA can quite convincingly argue that interest rates now are throttling activity sufficiently. But the question, of course, will be whether on Tuesday they do lift rates again. People are quite divided on this. Wouldn't surprise me, though, if the RBA went into a parking mode for a period of time at the moment, and we'll have to see how that plays out down the track. And then finally, before I close off today, just to explain, this is my temporary studio setup. It's nothing like as sophisticated as previously, but hopefully the quality is reasonable. Can't show the green screen or anything at the moment, but at least hopefully the image is reasonable at the moment. I'm actually sitting on the floor, would you believe? And I'm using my Yola box, which is a portable streaming and recording device, to make the shows. And I'll probably make a separate show later about some of the technical stuff that I'm getting up to do this. Anyway, this will be the system that we'll be using for the next few months, because of course my studio is in transit from Australia and won't arrive here back in the UK until probably end of May or perhaps into June. So a rather net approach from a technology perspective, but I'll be focusing not on the technology but on the very important economic information that's around. So much to talk about. I have missed a few items over the last couple of weeks as I've been travelling around, but we'll get back into it. And just to reassure everybody, we're going to be focusing, of course, on Australia, but also we'll be capturing information from other centres too, and perhaps paint a more global picture of economically what's going on. And there are certainly a lot of questions to ask, including stability of the banks, the issue with the removal of cash. ANZ, of course, has pretty much said they're not going to provide cash services into the future, which is quite interesting. And a bunch of other questions that we can discuss later as well. And hopefully, in a week or so, I'll even be able to start firing up some of the interviews with some of the long-time contributors on the channel. So I look forward to seeing those come through later on. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks very much for all your messages of support. Really appreciated it. And we'll get back to a more regular pattern of content creation over the next few days. This is Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.